There's a magpie bird.
Oh, yeah.
Who there's a bottle of water in some playground area, park area, and it goes up to the bottle of water and it dips its beak in to drink from it. Okay, here it is. See it?
Yeah.
Okay, it goes in and drinks from it. To watch. It's going to drink. But the problem is there's a limit to how far its beak can reach inside of it. So it gets a stone that fits inside the bottle, which raises the water level so that its beak can continue to drink from it.
Yeah.
This is some Archimedean crazy stuff going on.
It really is.
The magpie, by those in the know, is ranked among the smartest of birds. And this is doing something I think humans wouldn't even think to do.
Probably many humans.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so do you remember, how did they teach you where humans were in the tree of life when you were in school? Like we were the smartest or the biggest brained? Well, how did they describe it to you?
Yeah, we're the top of the food chain.
Okay. And what did they say about our brains? Just tell me in your...
Well, it's the size of our brains that makes us so superior.
Okay,
but then you look at a magpie.
Yeah, but dolphins' brains are bigger. So
yeah, 40% larger.
Okay, so then therefore what is, whale brains are bigger. So
yeah.
So then how do they, if there are other animals with bigger brains and we want to stay at the top, what do they say about those other animals?
I don't know. What do they say?
No, I'm saying, okay, so you know what they did?
They say they're inferior?
So what they did was they say, oh, no, we don't have the biggest brain. Oh, but brain to body weight ratio, then we're the highest. Okay?
Is that accurate with dolphins?
Yes. So because they're bigger, much bigger creatures than we are. Mm-hmm. And when you divide the weight of the brain by the weight of the body, we win.
Right.
We beat out whales, we beat out dolphins, we beat out elephants. Then there are those who are fans of those say, well, you want to do it lean weight because the dolphins and the whales have a lot of blubber, and that's not, the brain is not having to control the blubber. So cut away the blubber, that boosts them, but they're still not as high as us. So we walk away saying, we're at the top. However, what they did not say, which I had to, 40 years later, I learned this, that we do not have the highest brain to body weight ratio among animals, only among mammals. The magpie has a higher brain to body weight ratio than humans do, as do all other mid-sized birds, like crows, owls, eagles, these folks, okay? Mm-hmm. All have a higher brain to body weight ratio than humans do. So that rule that put us at the top was specifically for mammals. And I'm angry that I didn't think to hear how specific that was when I was taught that in 8th grade. Okay?
Well, isn't our understanding of like crows using tools very recent, like within the last 100 years?
All I can tell you is any animal that we have ever got to study in more detail than we previously did has shown to be more intelligent than we ever gave it credit for being.
Yeah.
And you know who has the biggest brain to body weight ratio of any creature on Earth?
Who?
Some species of ants.
Really?
15% of their body weight is their brain. And it's kind of obvious. Some of them, like the whole front section is their head.
Right.
It's kind of, in retrospect, it's kind of obvious. And ants are very busy doing some complicated things, and we don't know what they're doing.
Especially leafcutter ants.
They're busy, carpenter ants, leaf-cutting ants, and cross over into termite land. I don't know how big their brains are, but they're busy building stuff.
And they work in communication with each other
And they
somehow.
communicate.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I wrote a book about Operation Paperclip, and my God, talk about a rabbit's hole.
That's a rabbit hole.
It's a rabbit hole.
Let's explain to people that don't know what we're talking about. Operation Paperclip was when, after World War II, the United States gathered up a ton of scientists from Nazi Germany, brought them over to America, and even Wernher von Braun. They had Wernher von Braun run NASA. He was a Nazi, like 100% Nazi.
Good friends with Hitler type Nazi.
Yes, he ran a Berlin rocket factory where they hung the 5 slowest Jews. They would hang them out front so everybody would know, like, this is what happens when you work slow. We'll hang you. I mean, the Simon Wiesenthal Center said that if Wernher von Braun was alive today, they would prosecute him for crimes against humanity.
Yes, they would.
And that was the head of NASA. That was the guy who got us to the moon. That was the big cheese guy. Yeah. So we were willing to put a lot of really dark things aside in order to gather up the best scientists so that the Soviet Union couldn't get them all. And they got a few of them as well. But we got how many? More than 1,000, right?
Allegedly 1,400, but I would not be surprised if, the story changes and there were more, right?
Yeah.
But that goes back to our discussion earlier about being in pole position. I mean, that's why we grabbed those Nazis. We were like, if we don't get them, the Russians will.
I get it. And, and I'm sure the Nazis could say, I didn't want to do it. They made me. I'm a nice person. I love Jews.
Well, that was part of the mythology. It was like, we got the good Germans. Well, no, we didn't.
Right.
We got the top Germans, and who do you think the top Germans were?
Yeah.
They were coveted by Hitler, Himmler, Goring,
Yeah.
I mean, these guys were right. I mean, there were guys that we grabbed out of the docks at Nuremberg literally to come be part of our program,
Well,
One of these
if you're smart, you're an asset, right? I mean, that's what Genghis Khan used to do. He'd take warlords from the other side and capture them and go, listen, just come over here, bro. Come on. Work for me. I'm the man.
I mean, ideology aside, I'm super smart and I want that to be known. That's kind of that's the competitor, right? I mean, you cannot be the best rocket designer in the world and not want those talents, demonstrated. That's Werner von Braun's story. That's the story of all of them. And that was so shocking writing that book, because it's like, wow, huge amounts of talent, but how far will the competitor go to see their baby come to fruition? What are they willing to put aside?
Yeah. Did you pay any attention to the other places where Nazis went when they escaped Germany, like Argentina in particular? Have you ever seen any of that stuff? Where they have entire German towns down in Argentina.
Gosh, right?
They do Oktoberfest down there. They wear lederhosen. They drink out of steins. It's crazy. They speak German. And you're like, what the fuck is this? Like, my friend Tim Kennedy went down there, and he said he was literally talking to people, interviewing people, and they had photos of SS soldiers on their wall, and they would talk about how grandfather was a hero, and they're like, like, you're the descendants of escaped Nazis, and they put together a town down there.
I mean, the way the Nazis were able to flee is I can't read enough of that. I mean, that's what Jamie and I were talking about. It's like,
dark.
Oh my God. And it's endless. I mean, there's so, the ones that there was a famous guy that we got. He was the Surgeon General of the Third Reich. I mean, think about that, okay? Dr. Walter Schreiber. I mean, he was such a bad dude. He was in charge of the vaccine program. I mean, you just put those words together and your mind goes really dark, right? But we wanted him because he was an expert in vaccines. And we brought him to the United States. He was the only Nazi I found of the ones, the paperclip scientists who came here, that was actually outed, right? He was outed as a Nazi. And that's because one of the investigators at the Nuremberg trials recognized him.
Oh, Jesus.
And he's the only one we got out of here. And guess where he went? Argentina. And lived out the rest of his life there.
The show was called Finding Hitler. They were trying to find evidence that Hitler somehow escaped. It was really a bullshit premise of the show, but what was interesting is that there were thousands and thousands of Nazis that made it to Argentina and set up shop. It's throughout South America. There's a lot of Germans down there. It's kind of weird.
If you can imagine me on book tour of like the kind of questions I get, because we're talking, right? Having written books about Area 51, Nazis,
Jesus.
right? Assassins.
How are you still alive?
People, I mean, just last night I was at a book giving a signing, and people are like, "Is Hitler really dead?"
Oh God.
Right?
Well, if he was alive, he'd be the oldest man alive.
Right?
Can you imagine? He was.
I think that Atlantis, because surely that wouldn't have been necessarily the name, just through like the change of language, over, let's say 12, 13,000 years ago, which would be the time frame. So like surely there would be several different changes of language, but I think it represented a civilization that was doing great things. They were more global than what many people think would be possible. Atlantis was said to be a kingdom made up of, or an empire, made up of 10 kingdoms. And then there was the lost city of Atlantis, which was the capital, which was said to be made up of concentric circles, 2 of water, 3 of land, and essentially that they were obliterated by a cataclysm. as passed down by Plato, although it's worth mentioning that Plato got the story of Atlantis from Solon, who was his uncle separated by 6 generations. But what most people don't realize is that Solon had traveled to Egypt, and so it's the ancient Egyptians is where that tale comes from, which makes it even more bizarre because I would argue that the most spectacular ancient civilization is the Egyptians. I mean,
Jamie, will you pull up the photos of these concentric circles? Tell him.
Yeah, the Richat, R-I-C-H-A-T. It's worth mentioning
he's
that.
got it already here.
Yeah, in the first couple, I just want to say it's Richat. I used to call it Ricot. I was mispronouncing it. But let me ask you this, Joe, real quick. When you saw my video, was that the very first time you had ever seen this thing before?
Yeah.
That's the thing. So many. When I first saw this, I was like, what the fuck is that? By the way, you see that white? All those white blemishes?
Uh-huh.
That's salt. This was under the ocean. And people, let me just say, you mentioned Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock. I love them. And I know for sure that they don't particularly think this is the site for a few different reasons. So let me say there's absolute doubt. Even I am not 100% certain. I'm not even 100% certain Atlantis existed. What I am certain is that humans were doing spectacular things and a cataclysmic event happened called the Younger Dryas and reset something for somebody.
Is there a natural explanation for this formation?
Yes. So let me say that it is considered to be mysterious. They're not 100% certain of it. However, the consensus is that it was a volcanic dome that had risen and collapsed multiple times, like 100 million years ago, allegedly. I say allegedly. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with that. I'm just saying I would like to know where sometimes they get these figures from. Like, explain to me why it was 100 million years ago and not 99 or 98, because here we are talking about how crazy things changed in just the last 12, 13,000 years. So when they throw around these numbers, 1 million years in itself is an incredibly long period of time. But getting back to your question, some had originally thought that maybe it was an impact site from an asteroid or perhaps, but there's no evidence for it. Like there's none of the nano.
The problem is there's these concentric circles.
Yeah.
I've never seen anything. I mean, obviously I'm not an archaeologist, but I've never seen anything like this if you study structures that are like man-made structures, I've never seen anything like this that humans have made, but I've definitely never seen go to that one where
if you just go to Google Earth, you'll be able to find this quite quickly. It stands out, and it's why they call it the Eye of Africa or the Eye of the Sahara. All right, so just pan out a little bit, and it'll provide us with keep going. All that white is salt. In fact, I have a friend, Josh Sigurdsson, that went out there and tasted that shit off the fucking ground. That's salt. Because a lot of people say, this was never under the ocean. And I'm like, all right, you see all that? Even Randall Carlson himself, which let me just say, he, for a few reasons, doesn't, he favors the Azores. He doesn't think this is likely to be the location for a few reasons.
He favors what?
The Azores, the island chain, which would be, it's
and he thinks that was Atlantis?
To him, he's partial towards that. But so he analyzed this site, and you see all those striations, how it looks like the ocean, so that's all water erosion, Joe. And if you scroll in, so remember when Randall was on your show and he showed you the Missoula floodplains and all those giant ripples from the huge current that it went through? This is here. So scroll in, right there where your cursor is, Jamie. Scroll right in. You're going to see those same water ripples. Keep going, because this what you're looking at here is panned out. This is many miles. Like, keep in mind, this structure is 30 miles across.
That's crazy. That looks like the bottom of the ocean, like if you see where the water breaks on the sand.
Yep. And I have
wow, that's
better
crazy.
Pictures. And that, just to clarify, that white is salt, and that is because that's a lot of people don't know, Joe, that the Sahara Desert wasn't a thing until approximately 5,000 years ago. It's only in the last several years, and by the way, I'm quoting MIT research here, that the Sahara goes back and forth from green to desert approximately every 20,000 years. They believe it has something to do with the Earth's tilt, and that's worth discussing. But so this whole area, because people are like, well, that's not Atlantis. I'm like, well, first of all, if the Sahara Desert was a lush green tropical paradise, which had the largest known freshwater lakes ever known to have existed, for example, Mega Lake Chad, which is, like 3 times more water surface than all of the North American Great Lakes combined. It's a big sucker.
We had dinner together in London, and you were speaking about research that's being done on dimethyltryptamine.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that?
Well, that's happening at Imperial College, and I recently attended an event just a few weeks ago with several of the volunteers in that project. And what's happening is they are legally being given DMT at Imperial College, which is one of the leading research institutes in the UK. And for the first time ever, they're not looking to find out what are the possible therapeutic outcomes of this. They're actually looking at the experience itself. It's very well known, anybody who's used DMT, I've used DMT multiple times, is going to have entity encounters. They're going to meet entities who may sometimes look very weird. They may be part animal, part human in form. They may be almost formless, but yet they speak to you, they communicate with you. And of course, the mainstream attitude, this is just rubbish, this is just your brain on drugs. Well, Imperial College, they're now testing that view. And what they're finding is that and something else, DMT, as I'm sure you know, Joe, is a very short-acting experience when you smoke it. It's about 12 minutes, maybe less. You're in there, you're plunged into a completely convincing, sometimes terrifying parallel reality. It's so confusing, you hardly know what's going on, and then you're out again. But you come out with a feeling that something's been downloaded to you. In Imperial College, they found a way to keep people in the peak state of DMT for an hour. They're delivering it through drip, through timed release, and they're keeping the volunteers in an hour in that state. So they have time to find their way around the DMT realm that they find themselves in. And the astonishing thing is that these volunteers, both men and women, are all coming back with accounts of meeting the same entities and the same world. And it has to raise the question, and I know Rick Strassman has been on your show. And kudos to Rick Strassman, because he was really the first scientist to work with DMT and human volunteers at the University of New Mexico. Rick Strassman is open to the idea that what happens with DMT is that it alters the receiver wavelength of the brain, and that it allows us to gain access to other realities, that these encounters are not unreal, that they're real, but they're real on a level that we can't experience in a day-to-day state of consciousness. We have to be in an altered state of consciousness in order to experience them. And ultimately, the aim of this project is to map the DMT realm. You know, we talk a lot about extraterrestrials and ETs and making contact, and I'm sure the universe is filled with life, and it would be a very good thing to have the tech to make contact, or perhaps not a good thing, with all those other life forms in the universe. But right there in the DMT experience, inside our own heads, we have the opportunity to encounter another world, another realm, entities who are very different from ourselves and who have teachings to give us. And I think we should be spending a lot more research funds on exploring those experiences and finding out what's going on, rather than zooming off to other planets. Let's do both, but let's make sure that we understand that the consciousness is an enormous mystery, and at the level of consciousness, DMT opens up literally a parallel world. And there's a nexus here with quantum physics, and with the notion of parallel realms and parallel realities. Maybe we can actually access them. Well, the work at Imperial College ultimately is going to come up with some answers on that.
Nice to meet you, Ryan.
Nice to meet you, Joe. Pleasure to be here.
You're one of 4 or 5 people that I've talked to that have seen something that might be from somewhere else. It's always weird when you talk to someone that may have seen something that... Wait, let's just, first, before we even get started, please tell people your credentials, what your background is.
Sure. So, my name's Ryan Graves. I have an engineering degree, mechanical and aerospace engineering. I promptly left doing that to go fly F-18s for the Navy as soon as I graduated college. Did that for about a decade, both operationally in combat as well as in an instructor role, teaching the new students. And we did witness something while we were flying in our jets, but we were doing it we witnessed it in the context of our just everyday flying and our missions.
And what year was it that you witnessed this?
So we started seeing these in 2014 was the earliest that I know. 2013, late 2013, early 2014.
And could you describe what was the very first experience?
Yeah, so for me personally, the experience was simply just flying out to the area like I would any other day. And instead of seeing an empty airspace with just my wing person or another squadron doing something in a different block, there were all of a sudden a lot of different radar contacts, which is immediately a problem because, we could be hitting one of those or someone working in our area. And this was happening because we upgraded our radar the best we could tell. We were in a earlier radar called the APG-73, and we had come back from deployment. We entered a maintenance phase, it's called. We kind of do a little bit less flying, upgrade the jets if we need to, do any long-lasting maintenance, and we upgraded to the APG-79, which was a much better radar.
And what is the difference in the capabilities of the upgraded radar system versus the original system?
Mm-hmm. So, kind of practically speaking, it's like going from an analog TV essentially to like an OLED. It's, a digital modern tool compared to more of like an analog classical radar that has more limited range and has less ability to track multiple targets and things of that nature. So just generally speaking, we would expect to see, more objects if there were any out there or smaller objects, but there shouldn't have been any objects out there.
And so how far offshore are you when this is all going down?
Our working areas start about 10 miles off the coast, and then it goes out 100 or 250 miles or so, though we don't usually use those far eastern areas. But we would only see them over the water. So they would really only be in our working areas, maybe slightly in between the working area and land, but never over the land, sometimes over the bays that are in the area that are quite large. But never just kind of zooming west over land or anything like that. We would see them being flat, too. We'd see them perfectly stationary up there, regardless of the wind.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Wow. So what kind of wind are you talking about?
Oh, gosh. I mean, at altitude, you can have anywhere up to 100, 120 knots of airspeed.
What is that in miles per hour?
It's about 100, 130, 140 miles an hour.
So they're completely stationary with 140 mile an hour wind?
Correct.
How would something do that?
It's confusing to me as well. Even if we had something that could just burn that much energy, right? Like if you had a sphere surrounded by little rockets, right? Just imagining something right now.
Okay.
And if you wanted to keep that perfectly stationary, right, against gravity, you could just fire all the rockets at the bottom really fast and hopefully keep it flat, right?
Right.
It's going to have tiny little variations. And then if you have wind hitting it and all this, you could potentially have those rockets try to counter it, but it would never be perfectly still in winds like that.
Because the wind's not perfectly still either, right?
Exactly.
It changes and varies.
It does. So it's almost like it's the wind. It's not even really fighting the wind, it seems. It just seems like it's just there in a way.
Wow.
There were two aircraft from my squadron, VFA 11, and they flew, took off as a flight of two. That means they're essentially flying in a formation like this. And as they hit the area, one of these objects went right between the aircraft. The lead air crew saw the object. The Dash 2 aircraft crew did not, which is not surprising because they're usually, you're very focused on flying formation. You're just staring right at that aircraft. The lead really has actual leeway to look around. So he saw it, and, he immediately came back. I have to assume he didn't have it on his radar because he wouldn't have flown through this object at the entrance point. He turned around, flew back, landed, and I was in the ready room when he come back, and he had all his gear on, which typically is not a good thing because you want to get that stuff off as fast as possible. So usually means there's a problem of some nature, and he was just sitting there saying, "Hey, I almost hit one of those damn things," and we all knew what he was referring to, even though we didn't necessarily have a name for it, just because we were seeing these so much. And he described it. He described it just as a black or dark gray cube, and that cube was inside of a clear translucent sphere. And essentially, the apex or the corners of that cube, best he could tell, were touching that inside of that sphere.
And that description mirrors many of the descriptions that people have had of these, whatever you want to call them. Whether they're calling them UAPs now for some strange reason. UFOs is I don't know, does it have a dirty connotation to it? And is it tainted because of so many crazy people talk about UFOs? Is that what it is?
Did you ever hear about what Ben Franklin was? Okay, that's a different story. But
What did he do?
you never heard that, like, what he was found in? They found in his house?
No.
Like tons of bodies, bro.
What?
Ben Franklin, they found tons of bodies in his.
Ben Franklin was a serial killer?
No, he was like doing some weird shit, dude. Bodies.
Like
stuff.
experimenting with bodies?
Yeah.
Is this real?
Everything I say.
Was Ben Franklin's basement filled with skeletons? Repairs on Franklin's old London house turned up 1,200 pieces of bone from at least 15 people. Holy shit. For nearly 2 decades. By the way, this is from the Smithsonian. This is not some wacky conspiracy
This ain't
site.
SamTripoli.com.
Yeah. For nearly 2 decades leading up to the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Benjamin Franklin lived in London in a house on 36 Craven Street. In 1776, Franklin left his English home to come back to America. More than 200 years later, 15 bodies were found in the basement, buried in a secret windowless room beneath the garden. In 1998, conservationists were doing repairs on 36 Craven, looking to turn Franklin's old haunt into a museum. From a 1 meter wide, 1 meter deep pit, over 1,200 pieces of bone were retrieved. Remnants of more than a dozen bodies, said Benjamin Franklin's house. 6 were children. Forensic investigations showed that the bones dated to Franklin's day. Holy shit. The most plausible explanation is not mass murder, but an anatomy school run by Benjamin's young friend and protege, William Hewson. Oh, just an anatomy school.
Yeah, and we're just going to bury them downstairs.
Okay, anatomy was still in its infancy, but the day's social and ethical mores frowned upon it. A steady supply of human bodies was hard to come by legally, so Hewson, Hunter, and Field's other pioneers had to turn to grave robbing, either paying professional resurrection men to procure cadavers or digging them up themselves to get their hands on specimens. Researchers think 36 Craven was an irresistible spot for Houston to establish his own anatomy lab. The tenant was a trusted friend, and the landlady was his mother-in-law, and he was flanked by convenient sources for corpses. Bodies could be smuggled from graveyards and delivered to the wharf at one end of the street or snatched from the gallows at the other end. When he was done with them, Houston simply buried whatever was left of the bodies in the basement rather than sneak them out for disposal elsewhere and risk getting caught and prosecuted for dissection and grave robbing. Franklin was probably aware of the illegal studies going on in his building, says the Benjamin Franklin House, but it's doubtful that he was involved himself. Still, we can't imagine that, curious man that he was, he didn't sneak down and check out the proceedings at least once or twice. Of course he did. Could you imagine if you're my friend and we live together and I say, Sam, what are you up to? You're like, bro, we got to find out how people work, and there's only one way to do it. We got to look at bodies. Whoa, how are you going to do that? We got to find a place where we can fucking legally or secretly look at bodies. Well, I got a basement. Okay, so what do we do with the bodies? Bury them, bro. But back then, when they were studying medicine, isn't that what they did? Like, all those people that like studied anatomy back then, how did they, if it was illegal to study anatomy, if it was illegal to study bodies, how else would they find out how anatomy worked?
That seems weird, but who knows? They had weird laws back then, but
It does seem weird, but it makes sense, right? Because if they had never studied anatomy before, and then all of a sudden it came along and like, well, we got to fuck up your grandpa.
Right.
We got to carve grandpa up like a turkey to find out what makes people tick. You know?
So weird note to add in another article about this.
Oh boy.
It's just
Franklin's history as a Mason was one of the historian's initial points of inquiry. Though shrouded in secrecy, Masonic rituals have dark known undercurrents which have at times gone horribly wrong. For example, in a 2004 initiation ceremony, a new member was accidentally shot by a member who meant to fire an empty gun but instead fired a loaded one. So
Yeah.
they fake shot at each other.
yeah.
But when historians dug deeper into what was going on in the Franklin home during the years the bones dated back to, they discovered the real culprit behind the bones is one of William Houston,
Yeah,
the
the real
medical
article's the
student.
same.
Yeah, they're basically saying the same thing.